in Astapor. At the city of Astapor, in Slaver's Bay, Daenerys Targaryen arrives before Krasny's Monaclaws and the other slave masters of the city, with her Dothraki guards carrying the largest of her dragons, Drogon, in its large cage. Daenerys is accompanied by her Queensguard members, Esser Jorah Mormont and Esser Barristan Selmy. Missandei the translator, gifted to Daenerys at her request, is now dressed in higher quality clothing which matches Dany's style of dress. All 8,000 of the Unsullied warrior eunuchs are gathered in the city's main square for the transaction. The other upper-class men and women of Astapor crowd around the square, gawking at the dragon, while slaves in heavy chains serve them refreshments. Krasny tells Daenerys via Missandei's interpretation in Low Valyrian that many of the Unsullied have not yet seen battle, so she would do well to blood them early, having them attack some minor cities and towns here and there on her way to Westeros. The Slavers will happily purchase any slave she captures, so it's a win-win situation. He also wryly notes that any young boys she sells as slaves will be castrated and ready to serve as new Unsullied when their training is over in about 10 years' time. Daenerys lets her dragon out of its cage and leads it on a long chain leash attached to its foot as it hovers about 20 feet in the air. She hands the leash to Krasny, and in return he gives her a cat o' nine tails with a hilt shaped like a harpy, signifying ownership of the Unsullied. Daenerys asks if it is done, and Krasny impatiently says that it is, as he struggles to rein in the dragon. To the surprise of Missandei, Daenerys calls the Unsullied to attention in Valyrian, and proceeds to test them with basic Valyrian marching commands. She smiles slightly, knowing they are now hers. Too distracted to notice, Krasny complains for Missandei to tell the bitch that the dragon won't come when he commands. Daenerys turns to face Krasny and bluntly says, "A dragon is not a slave," again in perfectly accented Valyrian. When a dumbfounded Krasny demands an explanation, she declares that she is Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, of the blood of old Valyria. Valyrian is her mother tongue, indicating she'd been feigning ignorance the entire time and putting up with Krasny's insulting comments to lull them into a false sense of security. Daenerys then addresses the thousands of Unsullied and orders them to kill all of the slave masters in Astapor, along with all of their household soldiers and any man who holds a whip. She cautions them to spare any children and to strike the chains off any slave they see. The Unsullied obey her commands without question and instantly begin attacking all of the assembled slave masters. Horrified, Krasny frantically shouts for someone to kill Daenerys, to which he calmly orders Dracarys. Drogon breathes fire onto Krasny, completely engulfing the slaver in flames as he thrashes about in his death throes. Her dragon then flies across the upper walls, where the other high-ranking slave masters are watching, burning them all to death. The Unsullied proceed to sack the entire city, slaughtering the slave masters and freeing fellow slaves, supported by the fire of Daenerys' dragons. After the fall of Astapor is finished, Daenerys walks past Krasny's charred remains, mounts a white horse, and addresses her Unsullied. She declares that they have spent their entire lives as slaves, but now she sets them free. If any man wishes to leave, she will not stop him, and no harm will come to him if he goes. She asks the Unsullied to stay and fight for her, not as slaves, but as free men. For a moment the Unsullied stare blankly. They have never known what freedom is. Then one starts tapping the end of his spear against the ground in support, and the others join in, until then one starts tapping the end of his spear against the ground in support, and the others join in, until she has what her brother dreamed about for 17 years but could never find, an army with which to reconquer the 7 kingdoms. Daenerys rides triumphantly out of the smoking wreck of Astapor, and drops the slave master's whip on the ground. The Unsullied trample the whip under their feet as they march past. She rides out with her 8,000-strong army of Unsullied marching in formation, as her 3 dragons fly above them. For the first time in generations, a Targaryen has begun to conquer again, beginning the liberation of Slaver's Bay. In the north. In the north, Bran Stark is having a shared dream with Jojen Reed. They are walking through the woods and see the 3-eyed raven again. Jojen advises Bran that he must follow the raven, and when he is confused, Jojen points out that he must follow it by climbing a tree. Bran begins to climb the tree that the raven has landed in, but he soon becomes terrified, remembering the fall that crippled him when he was climbing a tower at Winterfell. He sees a vivid dream memory of his mother Catelyn, repeating her warning in which she made him promise never to climb again, a promise which he broke, and thus indirectly led to the fall which crippled him. Bran is so terrified of the memory of Catelyn yelling at him that he falls off the tree. Bran and Jojen wake in their camp in the woods, disappointed that he could not follow the three-eyed raven elsewhere, apparently in the north. Theon Greyjoy is being led by the boy who set him free from the dungeon, and then rescued him by killing his captors when they tried to recapture him. He says that he is leading Theon to Deepwood Motte, a castle on the west coast of the north, which was captured by his sister Yara. He says he is concerned that some of the guards may betray Theon, so it is best to sneak into the castle through the drains until they reach his sister in person. As the boy fumbles around with keys at a locked gate, Theon sinks to the ground and asks if his father Balon knows he was taken captive. The boy says he doesn't know, but Theon says he probably did but left him for dead. Filled with remorse, Theon laments that his real father died when his head was cut off in King's Landing, that he had a choice between two families, and he chose wrong. Theon says that now he has destroyed everything he ever cared about, and his real home, Winterfell, is burned to the ground. He also says the only thing he ever resented about Robb Stark is that Robb could effortlessly be the kind of good man that Theon truly wanted to be, but had to struggle against his own failings to be like. Theon even apologizes aloud for having two innocent orphan boys killed, so in desperation he could pass them off as Bran and Rickon Stark. The boy is surprised, and Theon explains to him that Bran and Rickon escaped, so he had to fake their deaths so he wouldn't seem weak. The boy leads Theon into a dark chamber in the castle, and he calls out for Yara. The boy then lights a torch, revealing the same X-shaped cross that Theon was chained to when he was being tortured before. Theon was led in a complete circle, back to the very same dungeon he escaped from in the first place. Other guards come in, and the boy shouts to tie Theon up again, where he belongs, and that it was Theon who killed the other guards when he tried to escape, instead of him. The boy, giving commands, is revealed to be one of the head torturers, and Theon's entire escape that he led him on was nothing more than another form of torture, sadistically toying with him. Beyond the Wall. At Craster's Keep, tensions run high among the members of the Night's Watch who sought shelter there after escaping the devastating defeat at the fight at the Fist. Gran and Ed are shoveling pig shit, but the former rapist Rast urges them that they are not safe here and cannot trust Craster. The man sacrifices his own newborn sons to the White Walkers, and there's every probability that if the White Walkers do come, he'll hand over the Night's Watch survivors to his real masters. Gran and Ed don't want to discuss it. Samwell Tarly visits Gilly, who is deeply distraught about the fate of her newborn son. She is frantic and yells at Sam not to draw attention to the fact that it's a boy by calling it a he so loud, as Craster will want to offer it up as a sacrifice when he finds out it's a son. He asks her if she's decided on a name, but she responds that there's no point in naming her baby if he's only going to be offered up as a human sacrifice. She gives Sam back his mother's thimble and says she doesn't care about such stupid things. All she's focused on is protecting the life of her baby. Some of their wounded have died from their injuries, and Lord Commander Jeor Mormont leads a funeral service as they burn the corpse of a man named Bonin on a pyre. Mormont didn't know the man well, but he rode bravely into the unknown lands far beyond the Wall, fought valiantly at the Fist against monsters which they didn't even know existed, and they will never see a man that brave again. He closes the eulogy with the traditional closing line for members of the Night's Watch, and now his watch is ended, which the assembled men repeat. In the main hall, Lord Commander Mormont is checking a map in his journal, as Craster continues to crassly berate the men of the Night's Watch. Mormont says that they have to stay long enough for their wounded to recover sufficiently to be fit to travel, but Craster waves this off, saying they've recovered as much as they ever will. Craster openly suggests that they should just kill the men who are so severely wounded that they won't be able to travel, and if Mormont is reluctant to do the deed himself, he can just leave, and Craster will finish them off. Mormont declines. Another young Night's Watchman, Carl Tanner, comes in to complain that Craster is feeding them nothing but bread cut with sawdust, and he wants to know where Craster keeps his hidden larder. Meanwhile, Craster is sitting there getting quite drunk on the wine they gifted to him when they first came. Rast joins in the accusations, and Craster admits that he has winter stockpiles, but he needs those to feed his women and refuses to share them. Rast calls Craster a bastard, at which Craster becomes enraged and threatens Rast with an axe. Mormont restrains Rast, and Craster shouts that he's throwing them all out to lie down outside in the cold on their empty bellies. Craster says he will chop the hands off the next man who calls him bastard. A tense moment of silence passes, and Mormont grabs Rast to lead him out the doorway. When Carl, firmly staring directly at Craster, challenges him and calls him a daughter-fucking wildling bastard, Craster lunges forward at Carl in a blind rage, but he is drunk and clumsy. Without flinching, Carl holds off Craster's axe with his left hand, while using his right hand to ram a dagger through the old man's throat, which goes up into the roof of his mouth. He flings the dying Craster to the ground, then punches one of Craster's wives who is present, demanding to know where the hidden food is kept. Lord Commander Mormont bellows that the gods will curse him for this, as a guest killing a host who has formally accepted him into his home breaks all the laws of gods and men. Carl shouts that there are no laws beyond the wall. Carl continues to threaten the girl with a knife, so Mormont draws his sword, which makes Carl drop the girl, and begin to face off against Mormont with his dagger. Suddenly, Rast comes up behind Mormont and literally stabs the Lord Commander in the back, which makes Mormont drop his sword. For a brief moment the men stare in shock, then Gren charges and tackles Carl. The entire room explodes into pure bedlam. The desperate Night's Watch recruits like Rast, mostly conscripted criminals exiled to the wall, turn on officers who are loyal to Mormont, as well as some of the other common recruits like Gren, who stay loyal. Quick flashes of the fight go by, as no one can really perceive what's happening, and the mutiny spreads throughout Craster's Keep. In the midst of it, Mormont turns around to fight off Rast. Mormont may have a knife in his back, but he is twice Rast's size and completely enraged. Mormont grabs Rast by the throat and lifts him off his feet one-handed, then spins him around and hurls him against the opposite wall. Still choking Rast, Mormont nearly succeeds in crushing Rast's windpipe with his bare hand, but then Mormont starts to cough up thick red blood. His knife wound is mortal. The injured Mormont then sinks to the ground and continues to cough up blood. Now that Mormont is on the ground unarmed and helpless, Rast grabs a knife and repeatedly pounds it into Mormont's throat until the old bear is dead. Meanwhile, Sam rushes to Gilly's hut and orders her that they have to escape now, or they never will. Sam runs out of Craster's Keep with Gilly and her baby, as loyal Night's Watch members fall to the mutineers, who also kill or rape Craster's other wives. Gilly leads the way into the night, because she knows the woods around her home. Covered in Mormont's blood, Rast shouts into the darkness that Piggy can run for now, but he'll soon be cutting Sam's throat too.